Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lezak, fractional CMO at BDEX, along with BDEX's founder and CEO, David Finkelstein. Good to see you, David. I'm tuning in from Illinois, a different location, but what's new with you?
Nice to see you as well, Jessie. I miss all the plants behind you,
I know, it's a little different. But there's the river, the Mississippi. You can't see it.
Can't see it. There's a glare or something. Yeah, can't see the river. So at least you have a nice view. That's good.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. I'm it's been a busy week, but excited to get into this week's podcast. We have a great guest. So we had a great conversation in the green room ahead of the show. So looking forward to this.
Yeah, this is going to be great. I'm looking forward to it as well. So today on Deconstructing Data, we're thrilled to welcome on Mike Hattub. He's the Chief Solutions Officer at AnalyticsIQ. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it, David and Jessie. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. We're glad you could join us today, Mike. And we're going to ask you to kick off the show and give our viewers and listeners a little bit of background about you. Tell us a little bit about what led you to become the Chief Solutions Officer at AnalyticsIQ and what you guys are doing for your customers today.
Okay, well, I can start with, I began my career 30 years ago at Equifax. So in 1994, I started at Equifax, and that's where I got exposed to data, credit data, obviously. And I was there for a while, went to another small little insurance marketing company, learned how to build models, and then went back to Equifax for a second tour of duty in their decision solutions, which is where we get to do modeling and really dig into data. And so really understand how predictive models for both risk and response and conversion and all of those things were created. At that point, a guy named Dave Kelly went off and started a company called Sigma Analytics back in 1998. And about 3 or 4 months after he started that company, an idea came across my desk, and I knew Equifax couldn't do it. So I sent a note to him saying, you should do this. And his response back was, hey, let's go to lunch. And so fast forward, I joined him as his first employee in 1998, and we built Sigma Analytics up as a company that built models. We never made a dime off data. We built algorithms back when you could sell algorithms in the marketing space and the risk space. And we ran that till 2004, and we sold that to Merkle, which was great. Merkle, it was right before the mortgage crash, so probably good for us and maybe bad for them. But ultimately, you stayed at Merkle for a while, went off on my own after that for a little while in the data and analytics space. And I, like many other people, did not escape the mortgage crash and everything that happened with it in the mid-00s, but picked myself up by my bootstraps and started an analytics company in 2008, consulting and analytics company, ended up being AnalyticsIQ's largest client in 2009. And on January 1, 2010, I joined AnalyticsIQ as their third employee. My company was acquired by them. And so for the past 15 plus years, I have been the chief operating officer, the chief strategy officer, now the chief solutions officer. Ultimately, I'll keep finding ways to move around the executive team as we bring in other people and grow our business. And it's been a great ride. We've got, north of 65 or so folks now. The two people that were before me have retired. So I am now the longest running person there. And I love what I do today just as much as I did on January 1, 2010. We have a consumer database. We have a business database. We build models to make our own asset better. And we build models to make our clients' products and projects and programs better.
That's awesome. So, wow, you've been in the data modeling space for a long time. It's gone full circle from Equifax to doing your own data models for AnalyticsIQ. Very impressive, and that's awesome. So we're going to get into the first topic of building a best-in-class third-party data asset. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on this topic.
So it's interesting because when we were at Sigma, we realized that lots of companies were making lots of money off of data, selling marketing data. And we were usually the analytics company that would lay on top of that and help make that data better and help make them money. Probably why Merkle bought us, one of the reasons. And we realized that there's a lot of great data out there, but there was a long way to go. And so what ultimately, Dave and then myself wanted to do when AnalyticsIQ began was, how do we build a data product where we put as much care into every data element as most people do for custom models that they would build? Because if every single ingredient in our database can be as accurate and predictive as possible, then the products we build are going to be better in total, and the products that our clients build are going to be better in total, and the digital audiences that we create for targeting are going to be more accurate. And so we just really wanted to put a lot of care into building that asset. And so I think the key is you have to really lean into data integrity at every step. So for every data asset that we bring in order to create our finished product, what data integrity checks do we look at every time we get new data? Looking at data over time, looking at the power and the validity of everything we create, really making sure that every product and every data element that we have on our file is engineered, consistent, predictable over time, just really caring. I think when you peel anything back in our business or any business, if you really, really care and you're really, really passionate, success likely will follow. And so in order to build out a true, robust third-party asset, we also felt like it needed to be holistic, meaning we have to have a consumer asset with a lot of information about you and me. We have to have a lot of a data asset around businesses. Who's a company? What are the companies? What do they look like? We have to have information around the contacts that work at those companies. We have to be able to connect people at work with people at home. So I know who Mike Hattub is at work, but I know Mike Hattub is at home, because as we know, people make decisions, not companies. We also know that having a robust data asset around healthcare professionals is very important. Being able to understand who those people are, and then being able to link all that data together, largely at the name and address level, because that's how a lot of the data is collected in AnalyticsIQ. However, in order to play in a lot of these digital ecosystems and social ecosystems, you also have to have a very robust identity spine. And so making sure that we have really solid emails and mobile ad IDs and IP addresses and all of the different disparate identity signals that help us connect our data, which kind of I refer to as a hub, out to all these different spokes that make it easy for our data to be consumed. Outside of that, there's really kind of two levels of third-party data. There's the raw and granular data that maybe incomes in thousands and everything's got a shade of gray when you're predicting stuff, and we're using all of that data to build more robust solutions internally. But then there's the syndicated digital world. So how do you take this raw asset that is very, very granular and convert it into something that's more bite size, I guess, or more usable in the digital ecosystems that exist today out in all the major marketplaces, Trade Desk, LiveRamp, and all of the others. So you have to have a very, very solid process for building your file and keeping tabs on your file. You have to have a holistic asset that allows us to get to every different kind of data that's available. You have to have the identity piece that allows you to connect all of that information. And then you have to have the ability to make it accessible, usable, digestible to all of the different platforms or users that are going to consume it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate all of that insight, for sure. I love your focus on data integrity. That's something that we have been touting for years, both on this podcast and beyond in articles I've written. I don't know why our companies are not already working together, so we can talk about that offline, especially on the identity side of the business. But I think that you have seen, much like I have, some of the challenges that you end up having to deal with when you're talking about data integrity and third-party data. I'd love for you to share with our listeners, without giving away your secrets, but maybe some experiences that you've had in overcoming some of those challenges, or or just some of the craziness that you've seen, because I know we have seen a lot of craziness in the past when it comes to data integrity. Companies trying to sell you data, and you look at it and you do your analysis on it and you say, okay, none of this lines up. Would love to hear any stories that you have or anything you can share with us.
Well, I think to get into that, I should also move into I feel like moving into our second topic around the CogPsy process and how we build data also will help you understand how we validate data, because I am from the trust but verify and verify and verify again kind of place. Because yes, I remember one of the things that I remember when I worked at Equifax was that we dealt with credit data, and credit data, everything was known largely. It was actual data being reported. And I think that when I got into the marketing world early on, I erroneously thought that, oh, if somebody tells me data is known, it must be known. And then you find out that what they really meant was known in air quotes. And so, there's not a whole lot of things that you know about people in marketing data. Most of it is predicted, especially at scale. I might know something about a small group of people, but how do I know that on 260 million people, which is, the size of our consumer database, or 130 million business contacts, which is the size of our business contact file? So, I feel like when we created this process around CogPsy, we decided, there's always been this gap between, qualitative insights and quantitative measurement. So how do you bridge that divide? And we tried for years early on how to do that, because we knew there were so many amazing attitudinal and behavioral things that you could learn, but how do you project them in an, analytically or formulaically onto a file that you can then project those insights with some level of accuracy? And so we work with, we work with known data, we work with survey data and we create surveys in order to help us build out accurate targets or seeds that we can model. But of course, when we're doing that, and we use our cognitive sciences team in order to create all of that, because we also know that just because we're really good at building models, it takes a whole nother level of expertise in order to build out surveys and experiments, so to speak, that may get people to provide true responses. Because sometimes people lie, they just don't know it. They're not trying to, and I use this example, like sometimes I ask you if you get good sleep and you say yes, but I ask you if you use a sleep aid and you say yes. And I ask you if you get 4 hours of sleep a night and you say yes. Well, you don't get good sleep. You just think you do. And so that's sort of some of the very simplistic psychological piece, but we also ask a lot of the core questions every single survey so that we know things about people. And then when we get new data in and we're told that that new data can help us improve our income or do whatever, and we start to analyze it, then we're going to always use a lot of our own internal truth set data to help us validate or invalidate data that people say can help us, because we're always being asked if new data can, if we're interested in new data sources that can make our data better. And, the analyst in me always wants to test. But of course, obviously testing isn't just about running frequencies and looking at distributions. Testing is having some sort of accuracy measure that you can benchmark against. So you can't do that with everything, but, we do the best we can to kick the tires on everything that comes in and model it against whatever truth sets we have access to.
I loved, actually, I see the comments that are coming in, so I just put those on the screen. But I love that earlier you mentioned blending qualitative and quantitative, because I love qualitative data and that's my background. And so could you tell us a little bit more about what type of qualitative data and how are you using it?
Well, when I think of qualitative, and maybe I'm using that term incorrectly, maybe I'm not, but when I talk about qualitative, I mean things you can't know at scale. So where things like age and gender and income and things like that are sort of quantitative, because you're building something. Things like models that we build to predict things like impulsivity or conscientiousness or likelihood to purchase a product because of social awareness or whatever, things that like you can't know at scale. There's no known national consumer database of impulsive people, for example. So you can't just use that as known data and build that into your database. You have to go out and ask questions from a qualitative perspective to find out
Yes.
what makes somebody impulsive, and then use those data points to then project those insights out onto the full national consumer file. That's just a quick example.
Yeah, thank you for getting to that. I guess that was the part I was waiting to hear, like the interview question or the focus group, or where was that qualitative data coming in?
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so real quick, I'll just read some of the questions, and I'll read them all, and you both can address them or not. But we've got Layla asking, I know CogPsy blends psychology with data science. What kind of edge does that give you when it comes to prediction or personalization? And then we have Anissa asking, so fascinating to learn about the cognitive psychology perspective and how it relates to data. So proud of you, Dad. Oh, this must be your daughter. And I just didn't notice the last name, and super cool opportunity. Anissa, that's so great. I love that. And then Travis, a person's perception does not always equal reality. So true. Cognitive psychology helps identify where the two match or do not match. And then he put CogPsy plus data science equals predictive power. So what's your reaction to all of that, Mike?
It's hard to it's hard to quantify Leela's question because everything has different levels of value. But what I will say is that for the first several years in our company, we had relatively, I won't call it straightforward because we were always as creative as we could be, but we hadn't sort of figured out this whole CogPsy piece and this whole to power our data creation in the first, 5, 6, 7 years of our existence. And so, we were continuously evolving, but we were evolving kind of within the same data that we always had and trying to make it more predictive. And we were winning and it was growing and it was great. And then we kind of got to the point where how do we start to create different data elements, data elements that we're not just going to recreate a new version again, like the impulsivity or the sleep or the, instead of just getting data that says I'm a dog owner, maybe also being able to build models to say that I'm the kind of dog owner that likes to adopt, or I buy high-end pet food, like trying to go more granular, except, as opposed to just staying very high level at like interests. And so, sometimes people say, oh, there's nothing new under the sun. If you build a new algorithm, but with the same to predict something different, but with all of the same base data, in theory, you're not really building, you're not technically building something more valuable. But the truth is time and time again, that's proven wrong. Like every time we build new data elements, and we at AnalyticsIQ on our consumer side, we develop 50 to 70 new data products every quarter to stay in kind of lockstep with how the market is going and how where the industry is needing data and products. And wouldn't you know it, every time we build new data products, they end up finding their way into new models that we build. So it just goes to show you that even if you're using a lot of the same sandbox to create essentially new ways to organize the universe, those data products end up becoming valuable in new models. And, I can't put like oh, it's 10% better, oh, it's 20% better, because honestly, it could be infinitely better, because had we not leaned into this CogPsy process to build, continue to innovate, maybe we're half the size we are today.
Yeah, I think Anissa keeps jumping in there. She's embarrassing you.
My biggest fan.
That's great. We all want that. We all want our daughters to be our biggest fan. So what you said was really interesting, especially, it just struck me with especially with like the dog owners and identifying not just dog owners, but dog owners that are likely to, adopt, or dog owners that are likely to buy high-end dog food, things like that. And it's really interesting because I think that we're finally at sort of a point where the industry is starting to understand the value of building these very highly targeted audiences, where if you go back 10 years, the start of both of our companies, like we're trying to do that while companies were just saying, yeah, but if I just target all dog owners, the high-end dog food owners are in there somewhere, and nobody really cared. And they just wanted scale. Okay. So everybody would talk to you about scale. Oh, well, this audience has, 50 million people. I'd rather go after that 50 million people. But now, if you can go after the 10 million people that are, dog owners that are likely to buy that expensive dog food, you can generate an ad campaign with a much stronger return on ad spend. And people are finally starting to get that. And they're finally starting to sort of do the math and be, and maybe some of the financial, issues that have happened in the past few years from COVID on to now have caused companies to start taking a closer look at where they're spending and looking for greater efficiencies. And to me, it's one of those things where I want to say it's about time, because we've been trying to, in our business, just like your business, trying to get people to understand the importance of data quality, the importance of, quality over scale, instead of just going for scale. And so I think that you're in this business at the right time now today, when people are finally, looking at it at that level.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. I mean, I remember even going back and like using healthcare as an example. We do a fair amount of work in the healthcare space, and I remember talking to health entities 5, 6, 7 years ago, telling them about predicted data, and you know, that wasn't really something that would resonate because they wanted to use deterministic information that they could gather from, actual health encounters. And of course, now as you look at the expansion of health and pharma, and you look at social determinants that can drive healthcare, well, social determinants of health can't be known at scale. When you're looking at things like transportation challenges and economic challenges and all the other types of social determinants of health, it has to be modeled data. And so I think that, being able to not only offer really cool data at scale, but also unique data at scale. And to your point, David, I mean, when you think about, the amount of syndicated digital audiences that are out there today, you have to get creative in order to not only build things that are unique, but also that are going to outperform all the other options that are available when anybody jumps into a DSP and like searches for dog owners, for example.
Yeah. 100%.
Well, I want to make sure we get to some of these post-topic questions, David, but did you want to react to what he just said?
Yeah, no, I was going to say the same thing. Like, we need to move on to the next subject so that we have time for everything. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, we kind of gotten a little bit into models, but custom data models driving client success. Anything you want to share with us there, Mike?
Yeah, and I'll be quick on this one, quick for me anyway. But I personally think so. Custom models are fun because you get to have a conversation with a prospect. You get to convince them that you can help them deliver a solution. Usually, you get to hear them tell you why something they'd been using previously wasn't performing. So obviously, you're now coming from a sort of place of defense. You're hearing them, tell you what data then you ask them what data you have, what data they have. You go through this whole process of understanding their business, what they've done in the past, what data they have available, help guide them onto what data they need to deliver to us in order for us to append our wealth of information, whether it's consumer or business, so that we can then either build response models or lookalike models or whatever they may be, come back and present those, and then get into the market, whether it's the digital market or the direct mail market. And with those types of engagements, I know from my experience that 90% of the success of those programs comes from everything that happens before you start pushing buttons and building the models. Because while modeling isn't easy, it's a process. And so if you take all this time to set up the data and make sure everything looks good, and you wouldn't believe how many times I find out that a model didn't work, and it wasn't because the modeler messed up or the data that was appended was bad. It was because the sample that was created was was erroneous from the beginning, and nobody did it on purpose. The right questions just weren't asked. And so, being able to really lean into all the business side and the pragmatic side of, these clients, understanding what they're doing, what they've done, what they're trying to do. And then it's really fun, because once you do all of that, then you still have to go out into the market and the models have to perform. And it's, obviously very gratifying when you find out that you move the needle for them 30-40% over what they had been getting previously, or something to that effect. So custom modeling is really fun because it's collaborative, or it should be. And it's just a fun project to engage in.
Definitely.
Awesome. Yeah. It's always great to see, what you produce for a customer is driving success for them. So that's exciting.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to move us into tech stack, which I know we talked a little bit about not talking about. So maybe we just breeze through this one, but just out of curiosity, what are the few tools in your tech stack that you couldn't live without that help you and your team get through your day?
Well, none of this will come as a surprise, but we are a Microsoft shop. So, you name it, Microsoft, whether it's Teams or all the other things that you use. So obviously those are a big part of my tech stack. Email, of course, Zoom, and all of the different, web X type things that we do. Do a lot of, my team does a lot of work, obviously, in Excel, and we use some other, there's a bunch of statistical tools that are used from SAS to Spark to Python to all the different types of products that use to churn through terabytes and terabytes of data in order to deliver the products that we need to deliver. Obviously the cloud, there's clouds that we have to use to store all of our data and run lots of queries and counts. And then, one thing that I'll say, it's not necessarily me, but it's there's all the API development that needs to be built out, or is built out, in order to be able to seamlessly deliver our data into all of the different digital ecosystems, and to, in a real-time environment, or whatever needs to happen in order to make sure our data is being surfaced in the right places. So not a super complex tech stack from, discussion from me, because I'm not an engineer or anything like that, but, that's what I kind of use or interact with on the daily.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And on that note, let's transition to some of our post-topic questions that we haven't gotten to for a while. So it'll be good to get to some of these questions and learn a little more about you, Mike. So, Mike, I'm going to just start off with our first question. If you could go back to a time when you first came into the industry, we'll say, I don't know, the data industry, what is the number one piece of advice you would give yourself?
I'll divert a little from the analytics and business stuff, and I'll say, treat your customers like gold, because they are. They don't have to work with you. So make sure you're, always treat them like gold. I also think personally, you should be authentic, be kind, be detailed, be available to your clients, but also work on yourself all the time. I think the early part of my career, I probably spent way too much time stressing on things that I look back now and didn't matter. And I should have been focused more on personal growth. So I think having personal growth exercises and activities as part of your early business life sets you up for not only success, but also a much happier, a much more fulfilling life as you grow. And also make sure whatever job you do, you're really passionate about, because you got to love what you do if you're going to do it every day. Because I'm pretty sure that none of us are going to be laying on our deathbed saying we wish we worked another hour. And I think if, we will want to look back and just be very happy with what we've created and that we enjoyed doing it. So my opinion there.
Totally.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate that for sure. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, we need to spend more time doing the important stuff, definitely. And going off of that, are there any lessons you've learned along the way from past jobs, or your current role, as you said, Chief Strategist Officer, but I know you've had a lot of other hats. So what advice would do you think everyone should know?
Well, I mean, mine came from, and I think I addressed it earlier. It was because I, started in the credit bureau space where everything was quote unquote known. And then when I moved into the marketing data space, I realized that known didn't mean known. Even if somebody said that, you had to really double check and verify. And so I guess my, from a more business perspective, I would say that it's really, you need to make sure you fully understand and buy into whatever you're building and selling, and don't just assume that because somebody says something is known or is supposed to predict a certain thing or tell you a certain thing, that you don't have a way to validate and verify that. Because if you are putting your name on a product, then you want to make sure that you can stand behind it and that you can understand how it's created and what's known, what's deterministic, what's probabilistic, because those questions absolutely will come up from your clients and you want to be able to answer them.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Great feedback.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's always a good reminder to think about these things. I'm going to keep on rolling with our questions. Mike, what secrets, tips, and tricks can you share that will prepare us for the future of data and advertising?
I mean, honestly, I think the future is like, I would hate to say what it's like tomorrow because it might be different. So what I was going to say is that the future, everything moves so fast now. Some of it is within our control. Some of it's macro, like regulations and things of that nature. Some of it is powered by AI. And so you have to be flexible. You have to be transparent. You have to really believe that change is normal, because you can't assume that what we're doing, like I mean, I think at the beginning of my AnalyticsIQ, you could sort of assume that things were going to be relatively stable, and they are relatively stable, but things just change much quicker now. What we were doing, before all of the sensitive data regulations is different than you have to do now, and what you do in new states get added. And so you have to be flexible. You have to make sure you're on top of everything. You have to make sure that you know everything about your data, so that when clients who are trusting us to make sure that everything we do is within scope, regulations, whatever it may be, we can have very thoughtful, detailed answers back to them so that they feel comfortable. Because you never want to lose trust, obviously, with any of your clients. So you want to always be upfront. You want to be very detailed, and you want to be very forthcoming with all of the information that you can give them. To me, that's probably my advice. And I would say that as you build out your data assets and continue to enhance your data assets, you should try to build them with that in mind, so that, you're not anchored to some old way of creating things that moves like a glacier, because the market moves too fast now. So I think just hang on and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, everything changes very fast. And now with AI, you were seeing so many new changes happen faster than we've ever seen them change before. So, to your point, hang on, because change is always coming at this point.
I agree.
Definitely. Oh, well, in closing, Mike, would you like to let listeners know how they can find you?
Absolutely. My company is AnalyticsIQ. So www.analyticsiq.com. My email is mikeh@analyticsiq.com. I love talking about data pretty much anytime I'm awake. So anybody that wants to reach out and talk about data and analytics and how we can help you, please do. Thank you so much.
Awesome,
Yeah.
Mike. Well, we really appreciate you joining us on the show. I think we had a great show, covered a lot of topics today. And Jesse, I'm going to let you close this out.
Absolutely. Definitely. Thank you so much, Mike. And thank you, David. And audience members, we want to invite you to get powered by BDEX. So I'm going to put our QR code up on the screen here. If you're watching on video, then you can scan the QR code. But if you're on podcast, just go to bdex.com and click on the Talk to an Expert button. But we want to help you build authentic connections with your audience and drive unprecedented engagement. So just imagine harnessing the power of AI to craft your audiences that truly resonate with your audience, your brand, and ensure that your marketing is hitting the mark every time. So we want to bring you closer to those goals, and we're eager to guide you. So like I said, use that QR code or go to bdex.com and click on Talk to an Expert. And also, if you are curious about BDEX's Deconstructing Data, then you can reach out to us at info@bdex.com and share your qualitative data with us so we can continue to make Deconstructing Data better for you. We have literally like 2 spots left for 2025 if you want to book on a Thursday. Otherwise, we do have Tuesdays open for paid opportunities if you want to come in those, which is a little bit more promotional, and you get really great opportunities to share your logos and other things. But yeah, until then, thank you for tuning in to this Deconstructing Data. And thank you again, Mike, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Likewise.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.